Wow. It is, as I told Geneva, an answered prayer. Even if it's just one Sunday, this is an answered prayer to have you all under one roof together. How wonderful it is. And I do want to thank everyone who helped with the Ren Fair yesterday. We shared a booth with Temple Bethel. Temple Bethel is working today. We took over for their Saturday yesterday. So thank you to all who helped make that possible. They will still need some help tearing down this evening. And so one of the things that we do here at the center is we come up with a topic each month, and then we have a variety of speakers, because as Martha said, I was one of those people that helped as an on-call speaker during the time the center was without a minister. So they got used to having a variety of opinions and wanted to maintain getting those variety of opinions even after I came on as their permanent minister. So we pick a topic and everyone speaks to it. And I kicked the month off with the new topic. So this month, we are looking at the topic of circulation as our life force. So that being said, how is everyone?
Great.
Great? Good? All right. So when we normally ask someone, how are you, what do we usually hear? Fine. Fine. Yeah, fine. So you guys are obviously doing better than fine this morning. Good, good, good. And some of you might have said something like this or heard this. When I was young, I used to walk to school barefoot in the snow, and I'm just fine. Huh?
Up a hill both ways.
Oh, right, up a hill both ways. There we go. Or you might have said, well, I got spankings when I was little, and I'm just fine. I turned out fine. Now, I'm not promoting that. Or I ate junk food and sugar when I was little, and I turned out just fine. Now, I think the list could go on and on and on of all the things that we could say we experienced, and we turned out just fine. But is just fine good enough? Well, for most of us, it was good enough. We survived. We're sitting here. We can attest to our experience. But I want to have something more than just fine in my life. I want to thrive. I want to experience life to its fullest. And to me, just fine sounds like surviving or getting by. It'll do. It works. But I want us to experience the highest and best in both of our communities and in all of our communities as a whole. I want to be able to say when people ask me, well, how's the center? How's Wellspring? I don't want to say, oh, they're just fine. I want to say they're thriving, beautiful, surviving beyond belief, getting their highest and best in everything that they do. So when we were kids, I think we got what our parents and our caregivers could give us that was the best they could do. And that was just fine. It worked. It got us through. But I think as adults, we choose to move beyond that. We choose to thrive. We choose to allow thriving in our life, whether we're still striving to thrive or whether we are thriving. That's the direction that we want to go. And our spiritual practice allows us to move from enough to a greater sense of enough to even more enough. Enough keeps growing. And we get to feel that gratitude the whole way. We get to experience it in a whole lot of different ways. So in religious science, one of the things that we teach are abundance principles. We teach that, and we teach that we deserve the very best. We teach that we deserve our highest and best. In fact, we teach that if we are in alignment with Spirit moving in and through our lives, the highest and best is already there for us to experience whenever and however we want to. And so what makes the difference between our spiritual practice and, say, a modern day, what did I call it, a religion of capitalism and consumerism? I think sometimes when people hear us say that we teach abundance or that we deserve the best, that's what they picture in our lives. And so I think it's important to make some distinctions. And this month, Spirituality and Health is a magazine that I love to read. And in here is an article called The Zen of Gratitude. Why is more and more always better if it can never be enough? And in here they talk about a definition of consumerism, which I think helps make a distinction between a spiritual practice that we have and what consumerism is. Consumerism, which in some ways seems to be the prevalent religion of the modern world, is based not on cultivating gratitude, but just the opposite. Consumerism is about cultivating dissatisfaction through advertising and that sense of lack in what keeps us always craving something more rather than appreciating the many things that we have. And what we teach, which is very different, I think, from that, we don't look at dissatisfaction. We don't keep our focus on a sense of lack. Rather, we are teaching that we already have everything that we need. Our spiritual practice keeps our focus on what we do have, and gratitude helps us keep our focus there so that we can continue to move from a feeling of enough. And like I said, then that feeling of enough can grow. That feeling of enough can expand more and more and more. And gratitude becomes the foundation upon which we allow our life to evolve and grow. So another question that was asked in here was, well, if you then spend your whole life focusing on gratitude and feeling good about what you have, will it distract you from what they are referring to here as the larger social and ecological challenges that we face today? The answer, and I agree with the answer in here, is that gratitude is actually what will help empower us to take on those challenges. And I believe that's true not just on the greater social and economic issues that are out there, but gratitude helps us to take on any challenge in our own life. It's that basis of gratitude that allows us to move forward and to really experience life in a greater way. And like I said, it's that place that lets us move from enough to a greater sense of enough. So another place that I think there was importance to make a distinction is around the idea of greed versus generosity. And in here, again, he says, when I think of generosity in a Buddhist context, it's not that we are generous because it's the right thing to do, but rather because it's the natural thing to do when we realize our deep interconnection with others. And I loved that, because last month we were talking about what is our true nature. So being able to give, being generous is part of our true nature. It's the natural thing for us to do once we realize that we are all interconnected. And we teach that we are all interconnected. Not only do we teach that, we teach that we are all one. We are all one. And so from that place of recognizing our oneness, then, as we give, we are giving to ourselves. I saw her mouth that, yes, we are giving to ourselves. As we give to other aspects of the whole, we are giving to ourselves. And so from that place, then, we know that we can stay in a sense of generosity as opposed to greed. This is rattling. Sorry, Skip. Another area that I think is really important is that New Thought also teaches us that circulation is important. So the difference between circulation and what I would call hoarding or excessive holding on to something. The difference between those things in our lives. And that's the distinction we're going to look at this month. What happens as we allow circulation in our life? The type of circulation that we are looking at is the kind that allows for growth, greater life, healthy evolution, as compared to stagnation or hoarding, things that cause blockages in our life. And that can be in all areas. It can be with our things, our stuff. It can be in our attitudes, and it can be with our finances. Stagnation, then, is when we keep things out of circulation, when we hold on to them and don't allow them to flow. And often stagnation, I think, is based on a fear. Either the fear that right now we don't have enough, or the fear that in the future there isn't going to be enough, or forgetting that as we move through life, there's always something else. You know, when I pack to go on vacation, sometimes I have to remind myself, there are stores where I'm going. I don't have to put it all in my bag from my house. And that's the same kind of thing. Sometimes we hold on to stuff, forgetting that as we move into the future, there will be what we need to support us as we move into the future. So when I was in my 20s, I worked at a nursing home, and one of the ladies there had boxes of quilting squares that she had cut. They're big boxes. I had 2 or 3 boxes. And they were made out of that really neat old-fashioned cotton that women's dresses used to be made out of, with the little flowers or little paisleys on it. Well, she wanted to pass those boxes of quilting squares on to me because I told her that someday I wanted to learn how to quilt. So I took them. At that point, I lived in Grinnell, Iowa, and I ended up moving from there to Dayton, Ohio, and I packed those boxes right along with me and took them to Dayton. And then I moved them from Dayton to Yellow Springs, Ohio, where I lived for 10 years, and those boxes remained on a shelf. I loved them. I was so happy to have them. But then when I left Yellow Springs and I moved to Tahiti, which is right outside of Albuquerque, I packed those boxes up and I brought them with me to Tahiti. And I think they probably stayed in the barn for about 6 years because all of my extra stuff was in the barn. Then I moved from Tahiti to Albuquerque, and so I packed those boxes up and took them to Albuquerque with me. Well, in Albuquerque, I found the Center for Spiritual Living up there, which at that time was First Church of Religious Science. And I also met someone who had a project that needed some cotton squares. So I gave her my boxes. I finally relinquished them because I had to believe that if and when I ever have the time to learn how to quilt, that there will be more cotton squares somewhere in the world that I can use. And so I gave her those squares. So what I realized then is circulation is putting things into use now, as opposed to holding on to it for some future use. And stagnation at that point is just taking up space in my closet and energy to move and, space in the moving van, all of that. So now if you're like me, someone's already thought, but the fact that you carried those boxes around meant that you were in the right place at the right time to give them to your friend when she needed them. Well, again, I think both the carrying them around and that kind of thinking is also based on an idea of lack. On the idea that the only way Source could have provided her with cotton squares was through me. And mine being that someday if I ever did get to quilt, they wouldn't have any other access to cotton squares. But both ways of thinking. And so I called it stagnation justification is a belief in lack, in a belief that there would not be enough either now or into the future. So in New Thought, when we talk about circulation, we often talk about it and think about it in terms of money. And when we talk about money, everyone goes, oh, not that topic again. So I heard you if you thought it. In fact, I have to tell you a funny story. My new mode of how to exercise, what I find most enjoyable, is I go over on Solano to the Aquatic Center and I walk in their channel. It's a stream that's actually moving. And for me, I move against the stream. Anybody surprised? That's my MO. I'm moving against the stream to get more exercise. But a lot of the people are moving with the stream, so I'm passing them and smiling. And so as I started doing this exercise, I decided that as I did that, I would think to myself, be the light for these people. So I would smile and I'd say good morning, hello. But we didn't talk. We just kept passing each other. Well, one day, 2 people showed up at the pool who actually knew me. Originally, I met them at Wellspring, and they knew other people in the pool, and it took maybe 10 minutes before the entire pool knew I was a minister. And it was very interesting to see the difference in their reaction to me as we were passing when they knew that, and they had to stop and talk to me and tell me different things. Because their idea of minister, has their idea behind it of what a minister is and does. So one guy had to stop me, who I had seen repeatedly for quite a while. And he said, I go to such and such a church, but my preacher talks about money 3 out of 4 Sundays a month. Yeah. And we kept walking, and I was like, okay. I didn't know whether he was making a joke or whether he was serious, but I know that that's the reputation that preachers, he said my preacher, that preachers have. And I had to make myself move out of a place of judgment about that as I started to think about how tempting that really is. And so if I was honest about what I'm tempted to do sometimes as I stand up here, given that I would love to be a full-time minister and not have to work at the university, it's tempting to talk about money. And given that I have Marcia, there she is in the back, our treasurer, coming up to me every Monday or Tuesday with the deposit slip, and sometimes her face goes, and I know that what's come in isn't meeting what we want to go out, it's tempting to talk about money. And then when I think about all the things we visioned, we do visioning once a month, all the things we want to do here, all the things that we'd like to see happen, all the ways we'd like to be of service in the community. And it comes down to we need more people, we need more money, we need more people, and it gets tempting. But what I also know is that circulation is about a lot more than that. And abundance is about a lot more than that. And so I pull my thinking back to knowing that we are fully and completely supported at all times and in all ways, no matter what it is we're experiencing as a community. And that's true out at Wellspring, and that's true here. So in addition to money, the other things that we think about when we think about circulation is what goes on in our bodies. Imagine, the air, breathing, the blood circulating, and nutrients circulating through our bodies. And so that's another example of how circulation works for us in our bodies. And then I think there's mental and attitudinal circulation that goes on. Consider when somebody's thinking and attitudes and emotions have stagnated. What happens? I think there's a reason why Ernest Holmes said, change your thinking, change your life. And then I started thinking, well, there's a reason we change a lot of things. There's a reason why we change the oil filter in our car. There's a reason why we change other filters, why we change our clothes, why we change baby diapers, right? Why we change our thinking. Because it keeps things new and fresh. Circulation and change keeps things new and fresh. And so that reminded me about a workshop that I went to on relationships years ago. The woman who gave the workshop's name was Joanne Lulin. And she talked about the fact that every relationship needed a balance of the novel and the navel. You had to think about that one. The novel and the navel. The novel is the new and exciting, the different, adventurous, the unknown, and the unexpected. And the navel actually comes from the belly button idea, is the familial, the familiar, the safe, the secure, the comfortable, and the known. And she said every relationship needs a balance of that. Neither one is better than the other, but you need both. And so I thought about our communities. And I think not just intimate relationships, but any relationship needs a balance in that. Our communities need that. We need that on Sunday morning. We need what makes us feel comfortable. We need the familiar, but we need new ideas. We need new ways of thinking about what's happening in our life. We need the balance of the novel and the navel. So I thought that this concept would help us then to understand circulation in a little different way. Because again, if we go back to the body as an analogy, when we breathe out, we're not losing every bit of oxygen that's in our body. We're releasing some, but keeping some there. And it eventually circulates. It keeps moving. And so there's a need for what creates the safety and security and the familiar, and there's a need for the new in our bodies. Likewise, if we think about our finances, we could think of tithing and paying the bills as that circulating out and putting into savings as what creates the safety and security. And we need a balance of both in our financial worlds. And then when we talk about our spiritual practice and our spiritual beliefs, we have the principles and the truths, which I consider the navel. They don't change. They're what keep us comfortable. They're what we're familiar with. They're what are our stability. But our spiritual practice also has the novel in terms of how we as individuals express spirit and the new ideas that we have and how we evolve in our spiritual understanding. And then, as some of you know how my mind works, my mind kept going with the body analogy, and I thought, okay, as we use things, as things circulate through and the body keeps what it needs and it's done with other things, we create waste. And as the reading said, what happens if we hold on to things like that? It's toxic. We have problems. And so we need to have the release of what isn't serving us anymore. And so then I thought, well, how does that fit into my financial world? Because I can't picture as I'm using my funds or putting them in savings that I'm creating some kind of waste like that. But then I thought, as we practice tithing and as we practice giving that 10%, could that be a way of keeping the toxins out of our financial affairs of greed and fear of lack? Because for those who do practice that, you know that you start to see how we're always supplied. As we keep that flow going, that supply is always there. So in a way, that can be a way of removing the waste or the toxins that need to be removed from our financial affairs. So circulation then keeps us fit in all areas of our life, whether it's physically, financially, spiritually, emotionally. And so why am I talking about all three? Well, I thought it was interesting to see how Ernest Holmes weaves all three of those together. It's not that he talks about one separate from the other, but that all three of those things are so intertwined and impact each other. So I'm going to share some of his words with you. This is prior to where Martha was reading. It's all out of a chapter, believe it or not, that he calls constipation. Now, he goes through here and talks about different issues that people can have in their bodies, and then he talks about how to work with them. And so this is one of those chapters. But listen to how intertwined all of the things that I've been talking about are. Constipation is often due to a belief in limitation or burden, and is mentally helped by knowing that there is no restriction, no inaction, no limited action, no bondage, no fear, and no congestion. Realize that all action is normal, harmonious, and perfect. Any thought which produces mental tension, fear of lack, of trouble, of disease of all kinds, fear of loss of friends or loss of position, is likely to manifest itself as constipation. Any kind of fear thought retards the free action of the life forces, thus greatly interfering with the functions of the body. So essentially, he's showing us that when you have what's going on in the mind, what's going on in our emotions, and what's going on in our body and in our body of affairs is all connected. It's all part of what we're talking about with circulation. And I'm up here sweating, and they turned off the fans. Thank you, Randy. It's the lights. Are you all okay out there? If we have the fans on? Thank you. Yeah, circulation. I need the air to circulate. So as we're talking about that, what does Holmes then say is the cure for these kinds of issues? So further on, what Martha read comes in between here. He says, a thought of love is always healing, and particularly so in the case of constipation. If the practitioner has a full realization that love fulfills all the laws of life, his life and the patient's life, that there are no restrictions, no burdens, no inhibitions in love, which is the very life within, healing will follow. And so I love that Mary Lynn and the band sang higher love. Think about that higher love. As love moves in and through our life, it can cure or bring healing to all kinds of areas. It's part of that which allows circulation to continue in a healthy way. Reverend Patrick, when I started up at the Albuquerque Center, used to do a meditation on Wednesday nights. And he would start it off by taking us into this idea that we have perfect assimilation, perfect elimination, and perfect circulation. And I used to laugh thinking, what would make him think of that? Why would he use those words? And then I realized he was quoting Ernest Holmes. Go figure. Well, he also used to say that that which stagnateth stinketh. So we can choose to keep that circulation moving and smell good, or stagnate and essentially stink. And I thought of the quote of Martin Luther King, who says, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." And so I had to add, constipation or stagnation cannot move and heal constipation and stagnation. Only circulation can do that. And love is part of that process of circulating what it is that we are experiencing. And so like the word circulation implies, we come full circle. And it was interesting that Martha talked about that. She left out that we spent 2 years of practitioner studies together. So it's not like we've been chasing each other. We did walk a similar path there for a while. And now she is serving us, so we do appreciate that as well. But the idea of circulation does bring us around. And so it brings me back to the idea of gratitude. And when we think about gratitude, we often think about doing our own gratitude list, or keeping a gratitude journal, and that's for ourselves, what we're doing at home. So how does gratitude play into the idea of circulation? Well, again, in this article, there's an interesting idea that he brought up that I wanted to share. First of all, he says, gratitude is not just something that we feel or don't feel, but that it's something that needs to be encouraged and developed in the same way as any other spiritual practice. It really transforms the way we experience the world. And then further on he says, gratitude also transforms the way we experience ourselves. But then further on, he talked about the ability to then take our gratitude and share it outward. So it's more than just thinking about what works for us, what we want in our life and how we're grateful for these different things in our life, but sharing gratitude outward in the form of appreciation. Taking the time to express our gratitude as we are experiencing it out in the world. And so a further article in there talks about having gratitude through every step of your morning ritual. And that includes if you're brushing your teeth or making tea or coffee or what it is you're getting to eat. Being able to be thankful for the water, being thankful for your home, being thankful for whoever cultivated and grew whatever you're eating or drinking. Taking time to be grateful for each step of the way. And once you've started to cultivate those feelings of gratitude inward, then taking them out. Each person that we meet, finding something in them to be grateful for and expressing it through appreciation. So I thought about the upcoming holidays and how challenging they can be for us sometimes. How sometimes we are stuck trying to figure out, well, where do we celebrate? Who do we celebrate with? Do we have family or no family? What are we going to do? How do we celebrate? Because there's such a wide variety of ways that we can celebrate what's coming up in the next month or two. And so think about, in that process, cultivating gratitude and circulating that out to each and every person who shows up in your life. For whatever reason, finding something that you can express appreciation for in terms of what they've done for you, whether it's somebody at a store or somebody in your family and in your life. Circulating it and getting that appreciation out there, expressing our gratitude. And as we do that, I believe that increases our feeling of satisfaction. It increases our feeling of enoughness. And it moves us beyond that into an experience of joy and even feeling that we have more than enough as we keep our focus on what we're grateful for. So today, Wellspring has brought newness and novelness to this community. A new experience to have this place this full on a Sunday. And I hope that being here has brought something new and novel into the people who are normally up on Taylor Road. That's the novel, that's the excitement that we have of being together. And what I know is that CSL here has had the experience of being without a minister. And so many people who have been here for a long time can understand how the people at Wellspring are feeling right now as they are without a minister. And as they're going through some of the same questions that I remember hearing when I came here as an interim minister, what do we do? What direction do we want to go? Do we want to be affiliated? Do we not want to be affiliated? All of those questions were circulating here, and now I know they're circulating there. But what I also know is that as we all evolve to something new and something different, we are rooted in those same principles. Those same principles serve us, they feed us, they are what keeps the navel, they're what keep us feeling safe and secure no matter what, no matter how we evolve. And what I also know is that when we come together, we create a newness and an excitement, and we circulate both the novel and the navel throughout all of our lives. That exact balance that we need as we move forward. The novel and the navel circulate when we learn from each other. In the back, we've started angel clusters here. Wellspring had angel clusters going when I was there, and I heard that angel clusters actually were here as Mastery and Life Center many, many, many years ago. So this idea is circulating, and we can create some of the navel, what's comforting, through those kinds of things that we learn from each other. And then I'm going to try and add some new to that and see that we create sacred circles out in our angel clusters where we can talk maybe weekly even, support each other out in our communities during the week instead of just on the weekends. And that is open to everyone who lives in those clusters, whether you're Wellspring or the Center for Spiritual Living. The more that we do together, the greater presence that we have. No matter whether we stay housed in separate buildings or whether we choose and find a way to come together. What I do know is that no matter what, we are expressing and circulating love. We are expressing and circulating gratitude and appreciation and generosity among each other from both congregations. We circulate our thoughts by releasing old thinking. We're circulating our emotions through releasing fears and opening to greater opportunities and options. And we heal anything that starts to stagnate by having new ideas and expressing new ways of living the principles that we have in our lives. Because in actuality, circulation is our life force. It is our life force. And we might have been just fine, but now we are going to thrive, right? And so it is. So it is.